Today we're going to be talking about something that I didn't even realize the buying public wasn't exactly aware of. So we're going to be talking about Band-Aid homes. A Band-Aid home solution is utilized a lot in Florida and utilized with a really high degree of success. So if you're unfamiliar with what a Band-Aid home is, we're going to be talking about exactly what it is and how we utilize it. And we're also going to be talking about who may need one. It might just be the solution that you've been looking for. So if this is the first time we're meeting, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Barrett Pastor, and I've been a real estate broker for 27 years. So hopefully I'm coming to you from a place of knowledge and experience, and I can help you navigate all things confusing Florida. All right, so let's begin with what exactly is a Band-Aid home? What do you mean by that? What are you talking about, Barrett? All right, so a Band-Aid home is exactly what it sounds like. It is a home to stop the bleed. It's a temporary solution to the problem that you're experiencing. So who might need a Band-Aid home? So let's say, for example, you have a home up north in Michigan. You have made the decision to move to Florida. You know you want to do it, and you're feeling a little bit of a time push because you know that right now is the time to go in your market in Michigan. In Florida, we have a buyer's market. There are tons of homes on the market. In Michigan, maybe you have scarcity of product. There are not a lot of homes on the market, and you know that right now you can get a lot of money for your home. So you went ahead and made the very wise decision to get divested. You said, all right, I know that I'm going to move. I know I'm going to Florida. Not sure where in Florida, but I know I'm going to move. So I'm going to go ahead and sell my house now because my neighborhood is seeing higher prices than it has in decades. So you sell your home. You get a long closing, a long escrow, a 60, 90-day escrow. And you come down to Florida and you start looking around and you quickly realize that you're overwhelmed because there's a lot on the market. So you come down and you start looking around, and very quickly you discover that you thought you wanted to live in Naples, but you discover that you also love Bonita Springs and you kind of like Estero. And Venice is pretty nice, and you didn't even know that Welland Park existed. So you determine, all right, okay, I'm going to need to rent. Then you look around at rentals, and the problem is you've got a couple big dogs, and nobody will allow your big dogs to come with you on a rental lease. That's one thing that people don't think about a lot, is that certain dog breeds, number of dogs, weight of the dogs, that all makes a difference. It is shocking to me, but Florida is not exactly dog friendly, at least along the coast. There could be some areas in the middle of the state that are very dog friendly in a more rural area, but not in coastal Florida, and that's where we're talking about. So that doesn't work for you either. So you start to think, well, now what do I want to do? I don't want to wing it and buy this home that I saw in Naples. Yes, it's in my budget. Yes, I think I'd like it, but I don't know. I've looked at other areas and I like those areas as well. So because you moved, you used a pod, and you have your things in a pod, and you can leave them in that pod in storage in Fort Myers for 60 days. But beyond that, you need to put that stuff somewhere or it's going to start to get expensive. Okay, fine. So you decide you're just going to go ahead and rent, but you have to accommodate the dogs. And then also you want to have some space because you have a lot of things. So you want 4 bedrooms, you want 3 bathrooms, you want to experience Florida. So you want a big lanai and a pool. You want a 3-car garage. You want to face east. You have all these requirements, and you're lucky to even hit one of them because you have these big dogs, or because you're requiring things that are really hard to find. So now you're in a bit of a pickle. You don't want to buy the wrong thing. And on top of that, the rent for this home that has the big pool and the east facing and the 4 bedrooms, all the things, and they'll allow the dog, the rent there is $6,000 a month. So $6,000 a month times 12 potentially times 2, because it might take you a couple years to get that done. That's an awful lot of money, right? That's an awful lot of money. So do you want to throw that amount of money away is the question. And what people will commonly say is,
I don't want to catch a falling knife. I don't want to lose $50,000 or $100,000.
well, let me remind you of what it's a guarantee. You're going to lose this amount here, guarantee, if you rent. So what do you do? What do you do? So if your budget was $800,000, then what we suggest a lot of times is let's go with something that's well under your budget. So let's say we look for something that's $500,000 or $600,000. Let's get you something that's kind of midway of where you think you might want to be. So for example, you are stuck between Naples and Sarasota. Let's get you maybe something in Punta Gorda, maybe something in Estero, maybe something in Venice, something midway so that you can experience life in both locations and see which area you like better. Now you might be saying, are you crazy, Barrett? In no world am I going to buy a house, live there for a little while, and then buy another house. Well, hear me out here for a second. So we're going to buy at the bottom of your price point. So again, you're pre-approved to $800,000. We're targeting $500,000 to $600,000. Maybe the lanai isn't huge, but it's something that's going to appeal to another buyer. Maybe it doesn't check all the boxes to your exact needs, but it works for you. You wanted 4 bedrooms, but we've got you 3 and a den. You wanted 3 bathrooms, but you decide that yes, just you and your wife can live with 2 bathrooms. But the most important thing in this Band-Aid home is that we establish the trends with the pricing. So if we can look at this and we can explain it to you that this is a great price that we're getting on this home, and that you can easily expect that if you stay 2 or 3 years-ish, I would always suggest you stay more than 2 years. So if you stay at that 3-year mark, by then, a few different things could happen. One, you fall in love with the area and you determine that you thought you had to spend $800,000 and you thought you needed 6 more feet in your lanai and you thought you needed that 3rd bathroom. But having lived there for a couple, 2-3 years, you determined that, you know what? I love it here, and I spent $300,000 less than I thought I wanted to, and I got a great price on the property. So that could happen. Next thing that could happen is that, now keep in mind, we're going to be at that 3rd year mark. So chances are everything is evened out and prices have kind of climbed up slowly, not shot up, but walked themselves up. If you look at the history of real estate in the area, that happens all the time. You've got moments where it comes down, sometimes more than others, and then it will walk itself back up. The coast of Florida, the west coast of Florida, tends to walk itself back up and recover quicker than any other state, including California. It does recover. So your point is to live while it's recovering. Your point is to not spend $200,000 on rent or some crazy number trying to not catch a falling knife and lose $50,000. You understand what I'm saying? So second thing that could happen is you discover, okay, I love Sarasota, I want to live there. You might be in a position financially to where you can rent that home, that Band-Aid home that you purchased. In that 3-year time period, the likelihood that equity has chased you down, if you bought right, and we're going to make sure you buy right, then you could be in an equity position. Not only do you get your down payment, your moving costs, your closing costs, not only do you get all that back, but you make another 10%. That happens all the time. You know, you never know when you rent a home. A landlord can decide to sell and you're 1 year into it and all of a sudden you've got to move again. You've got to find somewhere for the dogs again. You're moving the kids out of the school district again, and you have the cost of the move again. That can happen. The other thing that's wildly inconvenient and people never think of, because nobody ever thinks to put this into their lease, a lot of times when a landlord decides to put a property on the market and you're renting it, the only obligation in Florida, unless it's specifically spelled out differently, they have to honor your lease if it changes ownership. But what if you don't like the new landlord? What if you had some verbal agreements and now they're gone because you have a new owner of the property? And what if they're showing it while you live there, which can happen unless there's something in your lease that says they can't do that. They have every legal right to do that. So renting, although it seems like a good idea, and I would always say that if you don't know an area, renting is always a good idea. But in the short term, rent for a month in Sarasota if you can do it. Rent for a month in Naples. Rent something similar to what you'd buy, similar, not exact. But if you have dogs, that might be something that you just can't do. You have to go to a hotel, like some of the hotels allow dogs, like the Drury Inn does, the Residence Inn does. Sometimes you can make it work, but if you don't have the dog scenario, then you might want to go ahead and rent for 30 days here and there, bounce around, find what you like, and then buy. But if you do that for a long time, you are throwing money away. And if you're renting in season, you're definitely there. You're throwing a lot away then, because in season, it's double the amount than what it would be in the off season. So that is where a Band-Aid home really can come into play and be a great thing for some folks, especially if you theoretically could hold it for cash flow, for a rental. But even if you don't want to do that, the most important thing is that I always say you work to a 90% solution. In Florida, if you are checking 90% of the boxes, you should go on that. Throw your lowball offer, we do it all the time, and see what the best deal is you can make. So I always like to look at it like, okay, if you get it for X, let's say if you get it for $600,000, this is a very, very good buy. But if we got it for $550,000, it is an excellent buy. So that's how we look at it. We take what's a good buy and then we bring it down even lower. The worst that can happen is the seller says no and we move on to another house. So that's how you utilize a Band-Aid home. It works beautifully for a lot of people.